Alright guys, I wasn't too sure what I was going to talk about, so I kind of went off something I kind of said in the last video. And it was, I briefly mentioned immigration and how that could be something that people have a different point of view on. And I guess I'll start with, like, when I think of immigration, what do I think of? You know, I am the son of an immigrant, son from a family of immigrants that came illegally multiple times to come to this country for a better life. Now, I appreciate that. You know, I'm lucky that they did that because I ended up here. My mother's side of the family was much more established here in the United States and had been here for a while and fought in wars for America that my other side of the family wouldn't even have been taught about. And so I take into consideration two different histories when I view immigration now. Now, often people who look at immigration look at, you know, the result of me, of someone who's a citizen now, and the rest of our family that are citizens that are trying their best to have a better life, to become American citizens. And they look at that as the best outcome, you know. And that's the outcome we should expect, and that's why we should have extremely open immigration. But at the same rate, there's some in my family who are still good people and maybe have learned the lessons, but they're in jail right now. For some reason, I just drank coffee, so I'm like choking up on the coffee here. They're in jail right now for I'm pretty sure life. And there's a few others who aren't doing so well because they got caught up in things that often immigrants get caught up in here, especially in Southern California and that area. Now, in my family alone, I have the anecdotal evidence of the best outcome and the worst outcomes. So I kind of take into consideration both. And my point of view now, because our family's here, what is best for my family while we're here. And so I understand the empathy that is needed when you evaluate something like this, but I also understand the empathy of both sides, not just one, because I don't look at the past of, you know, what we did in terms of America to other people to establish what we have and why and I don't use that against other Americans to say, look what we did to these people or other people, and we should be open to this as reparation, as some sort of I'm sorry for the past. And it kind of, you know, it ties into forgiveness and just, you know, learning from past mistakes. Like, because if I follow my name on my Latino side, Verdugo, it comes from a line of people that you can trace all the way, like you can trace back to the first landowner, the land contract owner from the Spanish Empire that covered the West Coast almost completely into Arizona and New Mexico and a lot of northwest Mexico. And they were given that land by the Spanish Empire. And then fought in a war, the Mexicans against the Americans, and lost that land. Now we look at them like we should feel bad for the Mexicans because they're in a worse situation. But what got them there? What got us here? You know, people want to come to this country because people in this country did build up something that's worth trying to get to, even illegally. and they're leaving their own country that they've been in because it's not good enough. It's not even worth taking the time to repair. And that's what's happening in the Middle East, and some of that's our government's fault and our own fault for our complacency over decades, not just the last 20 years, not just the baby boomers. We're talking as far back as the Civil War. The mentality of American life is changed a lot, and that has to do with a lot of technology, but a lot of the way technology's gone has been kind of formed, you know. You look back at the invention of the car, and you see that there was electric cars in the late 1800s, like right at the turn of the century. Find out how that stopped, why that stopped, and you can shape the way things are by who's in power. And there was a power struggle during the Civil War, obviously, and even after. So there's been nothing but conflict and growth, good and bad, throughout every civilization. I mean, the Spanish Empire, I go back to that, they went through, and we know of the conquistadors. We know of what happened to their civilizations, the Aztec, the Mayans, the Incas, the different Indians, Mexican Indians. I mean, we look at the United States as being bad towards their Indians. It was just the same between Mexico and their Indians. And now we feel bad for Mexicans because of how we feel about how we established our country. But in all reality, Mexico established theirs through Spain in the same fashion. They just didn't have the upper hand in some way. I mean, realistically speaking. And we can go back even more to almost every empire and see what happened. I mean, look at Genghis Khan and how he treated people when he went over. I mean, it was said that a large percentage of people in the area had his DNA because of how many people, when he went in new areas, how many people he had children with. So you have multiple cultures doing the same thing over the history that we don't agree with now, but we kind of force it upon ourselves to make up for it when the rest of the country is still doing those types of things. And not just that they're just trying to keep a homogenous society of their own that stands for the same values. I mean, I look at immigration as, you know, to be honest, one of the best reasons that I see that Mexicans adapt so well to American life is they hold similar values, and that's oftentimes through their belief in their God, because it's usually the same God. It's the Judeo-Christian God. So they often have certain similar values that they can say, I believe this, and so do these people. So transitioning to life is often easier because you both almost have the same goal. The end destination for your life and your community is to be better people, follow a certain scripture. It's just the same reason as like Saudi Arabia has just Islam. And, you know, we may not like it, like I said in the other video, their civilization, the way it's built up, but, you know, they require it to stay that way because they stay strong and they're able to work together and build what they want, once again, whether or not we agree with it. Because it's not our job to change everybody else's mind to agree with something. And we're at a point in politics right now where people are realizing that there are millions, almost half of the country, that has a different point of view than another half of the country. And it's gotten to the point of we really have to think about how we're going to live with that. Everybody wants tolerance, but they still want everybody to change their mind. Now my family, they have a certain type of values. You know, my dad calls his parents every day, even though he hasn't seen them like consistently for over 20 years. He doesn't call them every day, every weekend. And, you know, he still tries to keep up with that, and he's always tried to do his own thing. He still has a green card, but he has a business. He's made his own money. He's worked in unions when he's needed to, and he's he's done his own thing. Whether anyone else wants to do that with their life, he was still able to do that. And how he got through his life, it's much better than it would have been. And he still took advantage of the opportunity he had while he was in the United States. And he's been more of an American citizen, creating jobs for people, than most other people that just work at a job for someone else that they are provided. So I was taught differently on how to look at it. My dad said once, when he was in Mexico, there were Chinese people there that would run stuff speaking Spanish, and no one looked at them if they were Mexican citizens as Chinese or Mexicans. They were Mexicans because they were part of the culture. They lived the life. And but here in the United States, we say like African American and Mexican American, Chinese American, Asian American, you know, all these different labels that we think kind of sets us in a position where we can say, look, we're all mixed up and we can handle our differences and look how good we are. But it separates us all at the same, because if we are capable of living together, we should have one label for that, for people who are capable of living together without conflict. And that was supposed to be American. So like, even when my dad, like, we were just at this place called San Marcos here, and this wasn't a bad conversation at all with the waitress, but she was Mexican, and they speak Spanish to each other, and I understand a little bit, but not a whole lot. But my dad was proudly saying, "This is my son, my oldest son," and she was like, "He doesn't even look Mexican," and he was like, he's not, he's American. He said that to her. He's not, he's American. We moved here, and he even joked. He went as far as to say to her, as not even a citizen of this country, to say to her that, I came here so we would have Verdugos with blonde hair and blue eyes. It was a joke, because my son does have blonde hair and blue eyes. And, but that's how much it didn't matter to him as an immigrant from another country. Like, how much race doesn't matter. Like, what mattered to him is his name and what he does. He came here. He left Mexico. They didn't want to fix Mexico. So being a Mexican American means absolutely nothing. But being an American to him means even more. And it really struck me. Because often you have people who aren't even from the situation that I am, or even my father is, and his family, that want to make the assumptions of how they feel about things, and how other people should feel about how they presume things are. And it creates a whole kind of different, I don't know if stigmata is the word, that's the word that comes to mind. But it's like, it creates this, maybe the stigma, that's what I'm thinking of what it means to be an immigrant or from a family of immigrants, and what it means to assimilate and become a part of American society, and whether that's good or bad. To my family, it's a good thing. And the more I look at it, it is a great thing. My family from another country found enough opportunity in the idea of coming to America that it was worth giving up their home country to start somewhere new with more opportunity. But all in the same rate, now we have people who use that empathy to convince people that they should let everybody in. And I talked to my dad, and he doesn't really comment on Donald Trump's wall or anything. We make jokes like he's going to get deported and whatnot, but nothing too serious. We joke about it. It's funny. We're not worried about it. We're really not. And you think, I look at it now like we need a strong border, because we have people who want people from other nations who have absolutely nothing in common from us. We've had an ocean of separation on both sides from some of these countries, and oftentimes our are the direct enemy of some of these people. And, you know, as much as we want to hope that it's going to work out, we know how things can work out. I was learning about the Barbary pirates on this video with Christopher Hitchens, and it was a reading. It was a couple interviews from him, and this hair keeps coming up, and then an excerpt from his book, and he talked about from about 1550 to 1750, before the founding of the United States, that there were pirates from the Ottoman Empire, which was primarily Muslim, that would kidnap people going from Europe to America, and America to Europe during its growth before it became America, or United States, I should say, as slaves. And it was, I'm pretty sure it was around 1.5 million over 200 years. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but then as it went on to speak about it, it said that it was at the founding of the United States in 1776, the population of the whole United States was 2.5 million people. And because of this, they signed the Treaty of Tripoli with them, or they proposed it, and they did sign it, that said that, you know, hey, you know, we're not a Christian nation, they were saying to them, to the Ottoman Empire. And Hitchens went on to say that the reason they said they weren't a Christian nation was in reference to the Catholicism and the Crusades that happened not too far in the past at that point, and that we weren't their enemies, that we weren't a part of the Christianity that had taken a hold of Europe, that we forget the pilgrims were getting away from was religious persecution, but they were Christians and deists. So you had these people who can't come from the same book, leaving people from another book, from the same book, in their country, and then having to tell a Muslim nation that we're not a part of them, to get them to stop taking slaves that travel between Europe and the Americas. And so they gave them this Treaty of Tripoli, and the Ottoman Empire and the Barbary pirates pretty much said no. Like, our Quran dictates that we can do this to you because you are not a child of Allah. You're not a follower of their God. And thus, the United States Marines were formed to battle the pirates, the Muslim pirates that were taking Americans and Europeans hostage, or into slavery, I should say, not hostage, into slavery, right before the founding of our United States. That's how far back some of these feuds go. We talk about the feud between Jews and Islam, Jewish people and Islam, and how it's a 2,000-year-old fight that's so pointless. But right before one of the founding reasons of our military, of our Marines, was to battle against a faith-based initiative to take Americans and Europeans into slavery. I mean, if we want to blame the United States for the type of civilization that we have, or what we've done in the past, we need to be an equal opportunity critic of the past. We're so short-sighted that we're willing to grade our country because we want people to feel bad, or I'm not sure why anymore. We need to be a strong country, all right? And immigration is just one part of it, but often it's spoken because it needs to be talked about just to have that conversation out there. A lot of people will look at what I say and things about my family as anecdotal, but that's what we live on. Every single thing we know is anecdotal, until someone else experiences the same thing as you and peer reviews it, and then it's no longer anecdotal for those two people. You know, data is anecdotal unless you're taking it, unless you got it in your hands and you're absolutely looking at it and reviewing every little thing. I see both sides, and both sides say that America is one of the greatest countries in the world. And I think we as a nation should try to understand that no matter what problems we come from, it's about what problems we're going to face, and if we can withstand them, or if we're going to be something that just kind of falls to the whim. And, you know, what holds us together? What's held us together? What helps bring us together? And how can we respect that even if we don't agree with it? But I could get more into this, but that's just a little point of view from my side and my family, and how it shaped my point of view on it. I've always felt a certain way about it. I don't mind a wall made by Trump, even if it's a rhetorical wall through taxes, because if it's so bad that illegal immigrants are gonna come over here anyways, I think we need to evaluate our allies and understand why they have people fleeing their country in such masses to come here. I mean, that's the only logical solution to me. If you love Mexicans so much, you should wonder why their own country that they built is falling apart so much that they want to leave it. And that's one of the questions we need to answer. If that's our fault, then we need to fix it. If that's Mexico's fault, then that could be something that's been being used against us, and that's even more proof as the reason why we need a stronger border and immigration policy. But I don't know if you have any questions, and if you enjoyed this, or if you have any counterpoints or something maybe I missed in my thought that, like, oh, why didn't you think about this, or he was wrong, feel free to comment. Feel free to post something about it. I mean, this is an open conversation as much as anything, as much as it is for my ideas for my family. But thank you.